We are starting a new unit today in geometry, and for this unit we need to review a little bit of Algebra 1 before we get into some new geometry stuff. So I want you to take a minute and think, if we were to look at these graphs and graph them, what shape they would create. So I would just pause the video and think for like a second what type of shape we would create. So if we do that, hopefully you would recognize that the first two here would be linear functions, because we have a degree. If we look at the x here, a degree of 1, or in this case, if it's y equals 3, it would be this horizontal line right here. Now the second one, if you look at it, or this third one, I mean, if you look at it here, its degree, so the highest exponent on an x value, is a 2, so that creates some kind of parabola, so this is a quadratic function. And then this last one here, again, you look at the x, and it's still a degree of 1, so this one is also linear. So for this geometry unit, we are finally moving away from triangles, and in this unit, it will be a little bit of a longer one as we review Algebra 1 topics and introduce circles as well, okay? And then just make sure that you ask for help sooner rather than later as we go over these Algebra 1 topics. So today we're going to be focusing on linear versus quadratic equations. So for the first thing here, if you recall, linear functions, like I said, are that nice straight line, whether they're increasing or decreasing. Then we have quadratics, which are those parabolas where they either are facing up or they're facing down. And finally, well, we'll change color here so you can color coordinate it. This last one we're going to look at is exponential. And again, that is like this. The two we're going to focus on this unit, though, are linear and quadratic. Those are the ones that we see more frequently. We can skip that part. That was my bad. So there are two types of linear functions that we're going to focus on. The first one is slope-intercept form. So I would, as we're doing this, take notes, because these are going to be the types of forms that you are asked about today in your Schoology assignment. So make sure I would write slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b, where m is our slope and 0 comma b is our y-intercept. Hopefully this is something that's familiar from last year. And the other one we're going to be working with is point slope form, where we go y minus y1 equals m x minus x1, where m is still the slope and x1 comma y1 is a point on the graph. And so when we're going to be identifying what form it's in, we're also going to be identifying its key features. So that's where these two, where it's like slope and y-intercept, or is it the slope and a point on the graph, will help us eventually graph these functions. So those are the two linear functions forms of linear functions that we need to know. The next ones we're going to be focusing on is a quadratic function. So a quadratic function is one represented by three forms. We're going to go over those here in a minute, and has the key features of a vertex and a y-intercept on its graph. Okay, and we're going to see those in a little bit. Also, x-intercepts as well. It's not page 45. I don't remember what page it is, so we're just going to write them down in our notebook. So standard form, this is the most basic one that we're looking at, so this is quadratics, is ax squared plus bx plus c, so y equals. The key feature we get from here is 0 comma c is the y-intercept. Okay? Oh, sorry, that's the bell. So then factored form is y equals a, x minus, let's use r, and x minus s. So the key form we get from this one is the x-intercepts. So quadratics usually have two, and it's written as r comma 0 and s comma 0. Okay, whatever these values are. And then our last one is vertex form, which is y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. And the main thing we get from here is the vertex, which is h comma k. So I would make sure, if you need to pause this video to write down these 3 forms, we're going to refer back to them as we are given equations to identify its key features. So, like I said, the key features standard form gives you the y-intercept, which was 0, c. Factored form was the x-intercepts, which are also called the roots. You may have heard to them as that. And then finally the vertex, which is h, k. So, if we look at this here, you need to identify, is it linear or quadratic? Sorry, we're not dealing with exponential. And then which of the forms it is and what key features. So one thing I look for, oh, here I have 2 x's. And if I were to multiply those together, I'd have x squared. So it is a quadratic function. Then I need to think about, oh, okay, well now which of my 3 forms? So I'm going to scroll back really quick. If I look, it is multiplying, so it is written in factored form. So that is the form. It is factored form. And now I need to identify the key features. So the key features in this case are the x-intercepts. That's what we get from factored form. And our x-intercepts are, well, here I look. If we go back, I'm gonna write here factored form. We said, if you notice, it's minus r, yet when I wrote the x-intercepts, it became a positive r. So when numbers are inside of the parentheses, they change signs. So instead of it being positive 3, it's going to be negative 3. And then our other one, instead of being negative 4, it's going to be positive 4. So those are our key features here. Then our next one, again, I want you to think, so if you want to pause the video and try it on your own, we need to look, oh, okay, this has a degree of 1. So it is linear. It is in slope-intercept form, right? Hopefully you recognize that y equals mx plus b. And now we need to identify our slope, which in this case is negative 3, and our y-intercept, which is 0, 7. And yes, I want you to write the coordinates when their intercepts are points as coordinates because they are locations, not just values, whereas slope is a value we use to graph. Okay, we got a couple more examples left here, so I would maybe pause the video, see if you can try this one. If we look here, we see it has a degree of 2. Again, it's all based off of the degree, so we know this is quadratic. And if we think back to those forms, this one is that vertex form. So I would have these forms out as you are working on this assignment. So H and K give us our vertex. So if I look here, again, if it's inside this parentheses, we should notice that it was a negative H. Now when I take it out, it's a positive H. So here if I look, it was a negative 3. So when I take it out, it's a positive 3. And then K, since it's outside the parentheses, it just stays the same. So our vertex is 3, 5. All right. We have 2 more examples here. So second to last one, again, a degree of 2, so it's quadratic. I look back, it's standard form, which is that ax squared plus bx plus c. And in standard form, this is our y-intercept. That's what we get. So here, if I look, 12 is our y-intercept. And our last one, if you look, okay, if I multiply this out, we're not going to get x squared. We only have x. So it's linear. This is in that point slope form. And when we do this one, m is still our slope. But now we have this x1, y1 for a point on the line. So our slope here is going to be that 1/2. And then finally, our point of negative 3, because that's x1. Remember, it's parentheses. And this is kind of like a parentheses too. And positive 5 is going to be our point on the line. So now that you've watched this video, I want you to practice. So if you could go on to Schoology, there is an assignment and also these 2 workbook pages, 43 and 44, to help us practice identifying these key forms.